Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our special show Reset India, where we talk about all important sectors, specifically what exactly is being done in those sectors and what more can be done to try and achieve the goals which are required. Now, if you look at the food processing sector, then this is one particular sector which is really important and plays a very crucial role in connecting Indian farmers to the consumers, not only in the domestic market, but also in the international market. And recently, the government has taken a very important decision in the form of a production-linked incentive for various product lines in this particular sector. So we'll try and understand more about this PLI scheme and also about the overall growth of this particular sector and the key drivers for that growth as well, and what more can be done out there. We'll be joined by two very important guests as well, but before we go there, let me first take you through some key highlights of the PLI scheme and the reasons why the PLI scheme has been put in place. Now, if you look at your screens, then the new PLI scheme to benefit food processing and other sectors, that's the core focus area there. Now, establishing food processing facilities in far-off regions is one of the key aims here. Also, enhancing, manufacturing capability and exports, key focus on processing of local products as well. Now, the local products are going to be very important in this entire scheme of things. Then it also talks about increase in food production, farmers' income. All of us know both of them are really closely linked. And, the increase in farmers' income is something which has been on the government's agenda for quite some time. 1 lakh crore Agriculture Infrastructure Fund has been launched, as all of us are aware, and food processing sector, and this has been identified as the champion sector out there. And that is why 134 food processing projects have been sanctioned during the year 2020, and new products to leverage the private investment of over 2,000 crore rupees. That's going to be the amount of investment which will be there in these new projects. Now, the idea is to generate direct and indirect employment as well through all these projects and through all these schemes out there. Now, by 2024, the FPI will attract or is likely to attract at least $33 billion worth of investment. And most importantly, 100% FDI has been permitted under automatic rule in the FPI, that is the food processing industry. So these are some of the key highlights out there. And let me also bring in, our guests here, two very important guests joining us on this show for discussion. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Ms. Pushpa Subhrahmanyam. She is the Secretary of the Ministry of Food and Processing Industries. We're also joined by Mr. Somit Mukherjee, member of FICCI's Food Processing Committee and Vice President Procurement of Dabur India. So you have a representation from both the government and the industry here. Welcome both of you to Rajya Sabha Television. Let me begin with you, ma'am, and let's start by understanding more about this particular sector, the food processing industry sector. Why is it so crucial and so important to give that fillip to this particular sector in today's age and time?
Thank you. The food processing sector, if you look at it in terms of its evolution in the last few decades, is still a sunrise sector for the economy. It is very important given our stage of agricultural development today, from being a food deficit country. Today, I think we've reached the stage where India manufactures the highest quantity of most of the agri-produce. We are either holding the first position or the second position in the production of cereals, milk, poultry, fisheries, meat. So the entire range of food products, India is in one of the top first or second or third position. So given that we are a food surplus country today, the challenge actually is to reduce the wastage that comes in, because these are seasonal and perishable produce, most of them. So unless you have a very robust food processing industry, which can reduce wastage by their intervention in either expanding the preservation capacities in the country or for increasing shelf life, or processing and value adding this produce to better products, which again have a longer shelf life. So this is a very key role that this sector plays in the agri economy.
Okay.
And a second important thing that this sector does is that it creates off-farm jobs. Many of us are aware that there is underemployment in the agriculture sector. The labor force there is underemployed. Therefore, there is tremendous need and a sense of urgency to provide off-farm, to make available off-farm jobs.
Okay.
So this is one industry which is agro-based, and therefore if we enhance the capacities and setting up of agro-processing industries in the rural areas, whether it is in the micro, small, medium sectors, then there is huge potential for creating off-farm jobs.
Okay.
A third aspect why this sector is crucial now and needs to take off is also because it can enhance incomes of the farmers. One of the important challenges faced by the agriculture sector again is to find ways of enhancing incomes to the farming community. And if we reduce wastage, promote value addition, primary processing at the farm level, there is an automatic diversification of incomes and increase in incomes of the farming households.
Okay.
Apart from these three, very, very basic foundational kind of role this sector plays, the sector also accounts for about 11% of exports of the country. And if we strengthen this sector, enhance investment significantly here, given the fact that post-COVID, there is a global demand for safer, healthier, nutritious and packaged food. India, has an array of indigenous foods which are healthier and which use health foods like millets. So we can also have a bigger share in our exports and capture new markets, expand the capacities of our big industry to therefore get us forex by enhancing exports. So these are four very important pillars on which the takeoff of this sector depends and how it benefits the
definitely. Economy. That sums up, the importance of the food processing industry or food processing sector out there. Let me bring in the industry representative here as well, Mr. Mukherjee. Mr. Mukherjee, as Ms. Subhrahmanyam explained in terms of, what exactly are the key base areas, key basics which need to be taken care of or on the basis of which why this particular sector is important. From an industry's perspective, in all these areas, in all these specifics which were mentioned by her, where do we stand according to you? And also anything else which makes, the food processing sector in India really, really crucial and important from the industry's point of view?
Thank you. And namaskar to Madam also. And thanks, Vikas, for the opportunity. I think Mr. Subhrahmanyam has put it extremely well, but I'll add my couple of other dimensions to this as we see it from the point of view of industry. The first point that she said is that it helps farmer income. Anything that adds value definitely adds farmer income. And actually, as the farmer progresses, then his capability to produce more or invest more in his farm, in his produce actually increases. So that helps the country. It builds the base. So no country can progress if its agricultural base is weak. The processing is very closely linked to what can be grown at the right cost in sufficient quantities at the level of the individual farmer. So that is the first large point. Then there is a sector of intermediate processing. This is also key. Now all the things in the processing on the food processing side need not be done or may not be done by just one or two players. They can be done by multiple players. So there is a second chain, which is actually the intermediate processor. For example, someone who makes pulp out of a fruit. And then there is a third person who adds value from the industry perspective in terms of making it a finished product and packaging it. Around it, then there is a cold chain. There is a cold chain before when the produce has to be stored. Sometimes it may not be a cold chain, but it is some kind of a storage facility. So that is yet another dimension. And then finally, it goes to the consumer. And before it goes to the consumer, one very unique thing that the food industry manages to do and does it very well in a country like India, as diverse as India, is that it takes the produce of one region of the country to another. So India is full of diversity, which means that in all of our states and most of in all our regions have diverse food baskets. And what grows in one area is actually may not be available in another part of the country.
Definitely.
So it is actually the food processing sector and this entire chain that makes it possible to carry a product that might be surplus and available in one part of the region of the country to quite another with significant value addition. Now, in this, there are these actions of branding, value addition, topping up of nutritional value, research and development, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Apart from that, India is one of the largest countries in terms of its agri-produce, most significant countries in terms of what it can do because of the kind of climatic conditions, the kind of soil conditions that exist in our country. So the processing sector basically has done well so far, but I think there is a long way to go.
Okay.
It can expand manifold. It can take forward those initiatives which hitherto were not possible, and increase both the per capita productivity as well as the per capita consumption within the country.
Okay.
Apart from that, taking India abroad, so which means that typically all that is unique in India can go abroad in a competitive manner. It can find a way in the global markets, and if it is done through in a sustainable manner with the right kind of quality consciousness, then it is here to stay. Just like what we've seen in many other sectors.
Definitely.
So that's the brief take that I have on this.
Okay, definitely. That is, a very, very important aspect, the way Mr. Mukherjee here pointed out, in fact, looking at the diverse basket and the brand India, which there. But that brings me back to, this important decision, Ms. Subhrahmanyam, which has been taken by the government recently, and that's about the product-linked incentive, the PLI scheme. So if you could explain to our viewers, and obviously we would like to hear the industry point of view there as well, on how this PLI scheme will work for these product lines which have been identified, and why specifically these product lines have been identified. How will this help the entire sector or the overall, scheme of things here?
Okay, thank you. So coming to the production-linked incentive scheme, the Government of India has identified about 13 sectors, and we are happy that the food processing industry sector is one of the 13 as a sector of the economy where the government wishes to promote global champions. So this is part of the overall policy framework of government to promote champion sectors in the country. The aim of this scheme is to see that we incentivize investments in the sector by the large industry and, of course, even SMEs, and increase their sales based on certain targets, agreed targets, and thereby create reduce wastage.
Mm-hmm.
And we discussed earlier, reduce wastage, provide enhanced incomes to the farmers as a spin-off of this new investments, and also create new jobs.
Okay.
And in the process, if there is an export profile of the company also, will lead to increase in exports. So basically, of course, the idea is that we should incentivize additional investments in manufacturing.
Okay.
And the second point is the products that will be covered under the scheme will be those which are value-added products. Not every product in the sector will be covered. There should be a agreed level of value addition that is achieved, and the surplus perishable produce that is available in the country should be also utilized in this manufacturing of the specific products that will be notified for the scheme.
Okay.
So the initial remarks that I made, that it should benefit farmers, it should reduce wastage, and it should create jobs.
Okay.
So these are the tripods of the scheme.
The PLI scheme as well.
Let me clarify the final contours of the scheme. The approval of the scheme pertaining to food processing industry is yet to happen. The cabinet had just approved 13 sectors and approved introduction of a scheme for PLIs in this sector as part of its overall approvals.
Okay. So what can we expect in terms of the finer details? Any hint if you could give our viewers as to where we might be headed in terms of the benefits which might be accrued due to the PLI scheme?
The PLI scheme, as I said, will select segments or products with high value addition, high job impact, high benefit to farmers, and will certainly lead to, therefore, increased investments, increased exports, increased jobs, increased value addition, increased tax collection. So these are the 5-6 parameters that will benefit all the stakeholders involved in the process.
Okay.
A very important component which I have missed out on the scheme is that we also want innovative products, organic products to be also promoted as part of the scheme. This is basically to look to to support the startups which have emerged in the food processing sector. So here there is a very interesting component of supporting financially startups coming out with innovative products.
Okay, and that indeed is a really important aspect there of that scheme as well. Let's take some inputs from the industry as well. Mr. Mukherjee, from the industry's point of view, would you want to add something here in terms of the way the industry would want the PLI scheme to be structured or to be looked like with all these key focus areas which Mr. Subhrahmanyam mentioned out there, and from industry's point of view, where the key focus areas can be?
Right. So before I do that, let me add to what was just being said. Actually, how it helps this kind of a scheme, how this kind of a scheme can help the industry is actually in the following way. What it will do is that it will free up some of the investment if this kind of support is given in the area of demand creation. So that is so key. The demand needs to be there and it needs to happen quickly. So it will speed that up. The second thing it will do is that in all these chains that we just discussed, basically the entire chain, and it also, I would like to also add the logistics sector, apart from the cold chain, which is a key support sector, it can act as some kind of a force multiplier. Also, it is going to bring in investment into new technology. A lot of technology in the food in the food area, especially in terms of preservation, in terms of protection of value of the original food, and so on and so forth. You see, in terms of the process parameters, etc., have to happen, and that kind of research will get promoted through this. It will free up the capital to go up the chain and towards the consumer. That is the one thing. And in terms of where we are, as I see it, I think we are still in consultation, and the ministry is talking to stakeholders, and we are amongst them, and that's a very good thing, because a scheme of this kind needs to be, as far as possible, it should encompass everything and with the right kind of guardrails. So the industry expectation would be in these two forms. There is the domestic industry in terms of investments, since it's a very broad scheme. So typically there are those investments that will happen that are happening in terms of creating production or in terms of preservation. And the second part is in the go-to-market side. In the go-to-market side, where you go to the market and sell the products and create demand, there is a self-space creation. There are new things, especially which have emerged in the last 3-4 years, and particularly in the last year, which is actually digital marketing, etc., which will not only create jobs but also unleash a lot of creativity. So that is something that we see it, apart from the traditional modes like traditional modes of media, etc., that are there. Those, how to account for them is actually getting discussed. And we are also giving our inputs as many others. And sometimes the food sector is so wide that typically in different subsectors of food industry, there might be different kinds of promotion and production chains that are there. There can be third parties, there can be co-packers, all of whom add value in their various way. Many of them will be MSMEs, they will get upgraded, and so on and so forth. That will happen. The part that is also very excellent, very important, and that is going to be that needs to be looked into, is to what happens when we take a brand abroad. typically a lot of export of food products that happens from India happens in bulk, where the value addition is lesser. Now, the very good thing that is there about the scheme and which encourages us is that can we take our brand abroad? Now, typically high degrees of value addition, I think we have this capability, but it calls for a fair degree of spending, and spending in certain specific ways, including spending that happens abroad. So the policy seeks to lay out, I suppose, these things in great detail to give it a good start and a great push in creating wealth in India as well as abroad. That's the way we see it.
That's fair enough, and that's how the industry looks at it. I'm pretty sure there's a long way to go, but it is indeed expected to be a very interesting journey there. Ma'am Subhrahmanyam, I'd like to bring you in back here for a concluding comment, and how would you sort of sum it up for the entrepreneurs, for the startups, for those who want to, go ahead and utilize the opportunities which are there in the food processing industry, also along with the established players which are there?
As I mentioned, there are two important budget announcements for the sector in this budget. One, of course, is a proposed PLI with about 10,900 crores of financial assistance. There is another announcement of expanding Operation Greens, which currently covers tomato, onion and potato to 22 perishable produce. The idea is the surplus clusters across the country will be identified, and whatever gaps in infrastructure are there, whether it could be farm level infrastructure, logistics, agri-logistics, processing, storage, or marketing, all of these elements will be studied, and the ministry will collaborate with the private sector to invest in seeing that these gaps are addressed. So it could be cold chain logistics, cold stores, warehousing, or farm level. So there's a huge opportunity that is opened up with these two schemes, whether it is a PLI or the expanded Operation Greens. And it is not only for the big industry. There's lots of small, medium and startups who can really plug into this kind of opportunity that the two schemes provide and gain immensely. We also have a special scheme to support startups, as I said, under the PLI scheme, where we are proposing that innovative products with an initial market presence will be further supported by us to see that they occupy some niche space in the processed food space. So whether it is in terms of training, technology upgradation, R&D, or investment support, or even marketing support, I think we have now an array of schemes that the startups and the young entrepreneurs can look to support. We also have an Invest India cell with us, with a team which will answer all queries and even handhold and facilitate the new entrepreneurs to set up their enterprises.
So there it is. That sums up. Thank you so much, Ms. Pushpa Subhrahmanyam, as well as Mr. Mukherjee, for sharing your important views and insights here. There it is, all about the food processing industry, wherein there are a lot of opportunities and several schemes which will benefit at various levels in this particular sector, and also ultimately it benefits the farmers as well, wherein their income will get an add-on also with these efforts. We'll come back again with a different sector, with a different focus on what exactly needs to be done in that particular sector. Till then, you keep watching Rajya Sabha Television. Thank you.